Árpád Jorzsits, and today I have the pleasure to talk about our next Hungarian Azure user group event called Big Azure Day. Public cloud as a buzzword is here with us for a while. I have been talking about cloud for a decade, and I remember how slow was the start at the beginning. But in 2021, public cloud isn't a buzzword anymore. It is a more than $200 billion business worldwide with an exceptional 20 to 30% growth rate. And it's not slowing down, it's getting faster and faster and will go up to 500 billion in the next years, according to IDC. It is changing everything around us, our lifestyle and everything we know about traditional IT. Therefore, I strongly believe that cloud is having a similar impact in our economy now that industry revolution was back in the 18th century. But revolution isn't always easy. And it requires a completely different mindset at technical level and then C-suite level as well. Just think about it, CAPEX versus OPEX or waterfall versus CI/CD. It's all complex. Cloud adoption can be complex and challenging as well. And we realize that. Therefore, today we would like to focus on these challenges as well with our wonderful speakers from all around the world and around one platform, Azure. Because we decided this year that we would like to have a dedicated focus on all the big hyperscaler platforms, and we are starting with Azure. Before we start, I would also like to say thank you to our great sponsors, starting with Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions Hungary, T-Systems International, and of course Microsoft Hungary. So I hope you will enjoy the day, you will enjoy what you will see. Thank you very much for being here.
Hey folks, it's a pleasure to be here and talk about the participation of Microsoft in the field of mixed reality. As you hear us talk about mixed reality, I would like to explain what mixed reality actually is. Mixed reality is the blending of physical and digital worlds. You can also think of it as a spectrum that spans across the physical world on one side all the way up to the digital world on the other side. From immersing ourselves in digitally created worlds to digitally enhancing our physical world, mixed reality is a spectrum that includes all of these possibilities, from virtual reality to augmented reality and everything in between. Probably you have already heard about Microsoft HoloLens. Microsoft HoloLens is the world's first holographic computer. It's immersive as the virtual world gets merged with the actual reality. With HoloLens 2, it got a lot more immersive with the increased field of view. Combined with Microsoft Azure, one of the largest cloud platforms available, Microsoft's mixed reality services can be really powerful. Microsoft Mesh is one of these services. Microsoft Mesh connects the physical and digital worlds, allowing us to transcend the traditional boundaries of space and time. Okay, not like in the movie Interstellar. Microsoft Mesh doesn't require the help of supermassive black holes. The two main pillars of Microsoft Mesh are true presence and the sharing of experiences. Now you can more easily interact with others as if you are face-to-face and collaborate using 2D and 3D content. And the beauty of this is that you can join the experience and create together from anywhere on any device. Let it be AR, VR, a PC, or just your phone. From the developer side, using Microsoft Mesh, we can create immersive, multi-user, cross-platform mixed reality applications. The co-creator of Microsoft Mesh, Simon Scaria, and his team are here to show you how it actually works.
It's so wonderful to be here, finally being able to take the wraps off Microsoft Mesh and being able to give a tour to you all. Before we get started, let me give you a quick tour of the setup. What you are seeing is a custom camera rig that gives you the perspective as if you are wearing a HoloLens. With that, let me flip my HoloLens visor down and enter Microsoft Mesh. Foundational to Microsoft Mesh is this notion of spaces. Think of spaces like a conference room, except something that is persisted across time and geographies. I have my home space. I have a pipeline review space where my colleagues are waiting for. So let me go ahead and enter the pipeline review space. And I can see here my dear friend Nishant waiting in the review space. So Nishant, great to see you here.
Hey, Simon. How you doing?
Hello. Hey, Nishant, can you explain a little bit of what you are seeing?
Absolutely, Simon. I see an avatar of yours and I hear your voice as if you were right across the room from me here. I see an awesome hologram of a table which is inviting me to bring in 3D models and create and collaborate upon it. And of course, as I lift my hands, I see the hand menu where I can bring in more people into the space. I can go ahead and change my avatar and appearance. I can annotate, draw, and bring in more shapes and figures into the space, as well as bring in 2D and 3D content to collaborate upon.
Hey, Nishant, since we are here to take a look at the project that Doreen worked on, do you think you could quickly invite her if she's available to the space?
Certainly, Simon. Let me invite Doreen.
While Nishant is doing this, I want to make a mention that Microsoft Mesh is integrated with AAD and MSA so that hosts can invite participants into designated spaces in a simple but trustworthy manner. When I lower down my visor, I can see that Nishant has already invited Doreen to this space. Hey, Doreen, great to see you here.
Hi, Simon. Hi, Nishant.
Doreen, so great to see you. Do you recall the pipeline project that you worked on? It needs a quick review. If you could kindly bring in that model from your OneDrive so we all could take a look at it and make a few recommendations to the engineers, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Let me pull it up from my OneDrive. What's great about Mesh is the integration with the Microsoft 365 graph. What we show here is actually a model that our customers use today. This is a part that is used to prevent spills. But the idea is that a wide range of data can be showed inside of Mesh. Your connections, your collaborative efforts, your workflows, even your documents transfer very well from a 2D space into a 3D space.
So one of the things about collaboration in mixed reality is the three-dimensional fidelity that it offers. And while each of us can have a unique perspective into it, we all can rotate, translate, pan, zoom, add or redact from this model, driving clarity to the decision-making while reducing the cost and complexity of being in in-person meetings. One of the things that I miss out really in in-person meeting is the ability for us to annotate in a whiteboard or on a paper. And with Microsoft Mesh-enabled applications, I can bring up my hand menu, bring up my annotations here, and my fingers turn into, at this time, essentially a pen through which I can annotate in a space. I can see here that while I've been doing this, my colleagues here have annotated as well.
Yeah, and speaking of annotations, I think there's a piece of this model we should look at. Can you come over here and take a look quickly?
Sure.
Great. I'm actually noticing that this space on the model here may actually need a further look from our engineering team. It seems like there might be something out of date. Do you think we can take a look with them maybe early next week?
Yeah, I can request the engineering team to come and take a look. One of the benefits of collaboration in Microsoft Mesh is the ability for us to persist these spaces across time and geographies. So the engineering team can come, join the space, and pick up precisely where we left off with the annotations, with the 3D models, with the point of view that Doreen wanted us to take a look at it. And at any point in time, if they need the help of Doreen or Nishant for an expert eyes or hands, they just know that they are just a Mesh tap away. So thank you, Doreen and Nishant, joining on a short notice. We look forward to working together with you again on another project sometime soon. With that, I've given you a quick tour of Microsoft Mesh experience for HoloLens.
Wow, that was awesome. We could have got this to work a few years back, but with Microsoft Mesh, we have reduced the cost and complexity to fit in a 7-watt passively cooled head-mounted device. From spatial maps to presence to rendering, it's a lot of technical investment, so that as a developer, you can focus on solving business problems, while the Mesh platform solves the hard underlying technical issues. The 4 components of Microsoft Mesh are spatial maps, presence, rendering, and multi-user sync. With spatial maps, you can share and persist holographic content. This is what makes holograms stay in place across time, space, and devices. Presence makes it possible to represent ourselves in a more immersive way in the digital medium. It also brings spatial audio, so even as you move, the audio will be directionally emitted in the 3D space, consistent with your relative position. Holographic rendering allows you to bring in the 3D models and provide the rendering power that you need, when you need it, directly from the cloud. And finally, multi-user sync is the magic that brings the entire experience together. The Microsoft Mesh experience for HoloLens is in preview today. You can try it out for yourself by signing up at microsoft.com/mesh. Welcome back, everybody. Here's with me Zsolt, Mihályfi, the CEO of one of the first Microsoft Mixed Reality partners actually on the world, 360 world. Zsolt, can you please introduce yourself? What's your origin story?
Welcome, everyone. So my company started to do imaging, all kinds of imaging. We were doing in the first couple of years 360 imaging and gigapixel imaging. Actually, in this very building, we've stitched together the world's largest panoramic image back in 2010.
Wow.
And then we moved forward to all kinds of visualization technologies and started to focus on head-mounted displays, both augmented and virtual reality, back in 2011. So we've purchased one of the first commercially available see-through displays and glasses. And so we have a pretty long history in this mixed reality space, and then became a Microsoft mixed reality partner in 2017.
And why HoloLens? Why did you stick with HoloLens?
Yeah, so HoloLens was the first device where you could really do pilot projects, not just proof of concepts, but really deploy pilot projects, because before HoloLens, there were a couple of bigger players on the market like Google and Epson, but those devices were not really like they didn't put holograms in your space. It's just an overlay. Like Google Glass is more of a notification screen, while Epson had these binocular displays. But the only sensor you had, like IM used, like gyroscopes, accelerometers. So it was also more of an overlay. But it didn't blend together. So HoloLens was the first device where you could actually place virtual content in your space. And honestly, it was much easier to develop for. So we could go much faster because Microsoft was behind it with this whole infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure, the documentation. It was pretty good to go forward with the well-documented glasses.
Yeah. Not just like a prototype. Yeah, so Azure is the whole cloud platform, the whole ecosystem, with services ranging from infrastructure to advanced platform services like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and mixed reality. Basically, these newly introduced services, mixed reality services, are part of this whole ecosystem. Are these helping you and your company be more effective and focus on the actual business problems?
Yeah, so there is two ways of Azure mixed reality services. One is where it helps us to localize the content in the 3D space. So basically you have this so-called object anchors, which means that you upload the model of the 3D object to the cloud, and then the depth camera of the glasses recognizes the very same object and it overlays the information. So that helps us to localize, because the way if you look at all these robotic companies, they're using these markers. So you look on the marker and you know where the marker is in the physical space, so you could overlay more precisely. By the way, it's still the most precise way of overlaying information on the real world, but you have to put these markers. So imagine a factory, you put all these markers just to be more precise. So the future is that that you just know the space. The space is scanned. By the way, HoloLens is constantly scanning the space, and then you recognize the object within that space, so you can overlay the information. So we have already deployed object anchor solutions. And then the other category is when you put anything on your head, you have to be aware that it consumes power, and you want to reduce the weight, and battery is one huge weight factor. So basically, you want to offload computing as much as you can and just receive a stream. That's why 5G and cloud computing is going to be very important enablers in mixed reality headsets. So you have these. Most of the use cases are coming from engineering, where you have any kind of CAD model, like some kind of architectural CAD model or some kind of engineering CAD models. And basically, you have this cloud rendering service where you just upload these models and they're computed in the cloud. The glasses are sending back the head tracking information, but the actual computing is handled in the cloud. So you're just receiving the stream. And as 5G evolves, you will be able to load these streams anywhere in the world.
Wow. And like these services includes Microsoft Mesh, and we are talking about Microsoft Mesh. What are your opinions about Microsoft Mesh?
Yeah, so we are really looking forward to start using Microsoft Mesh because one thing is that you deploy a solution and one person can see this experience and can use the solution, but I think we've learned collaboration is super important. So you really want to work with your colleagues, and the way we handled is that we had to develop our own services to synchronize two HoloLens and to do all the information sharing between HoloLenses, and that will be handled by Mesh. The other factor is, or other important feature is that there will be support of telepresence. So we've built several telepresence solutions in the past, coming from Kinect depth camera, coming from iPhone depth camera, and those solutions are, several other companies did their own, but it's much nicer if you have a well-documented platform and you can just call these services from your application, so you don't have to do it every time you make something custom.
Mm-hmm. You had some similar solutions at OTP, right?
Yeah. That was I think in 2018, where the use case was that you don't necessarily want to go to your bank every time you want to handle some of your financials. So basically, you could just put on a HoloLens and connect with your private banker, and your private banker appeared in front of you. So the employees at OTP had this depth camera, Kinect depth camera on top of their monitors, and they were deployed. They were streamed to the client. And not just the depth information, the point cloud appeared in front of you, but also your financial graphs and your portfolio.
Okay, so that was a one-way teleportation, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think two-way teleportation is still tricky because basically to be able to see the other person, you have to, both person needs to wear glasses, and basically then you don't see the person, but you see the person in glasses. And all these like HoloLens and other glasses, it's not fully it's transparent, but you also see the projector's light coming through there. So it's not, you don't really have eye contact like you and I now. So that's gonna be still tricky, and I think these one-way teleportations are gonna be the first ones where you really see some content that you need to see, but the others don't necessarily need to see you.
Right.
And also it was, like, why does the private banker needs to see you? It was not.
Yeah. I'm not that a big customer of a bank to reverse some solution like this. Yeah, but you're using these Azure services for, I don't know, for the factory floor as well?
Yeah, exactly. So one solution where we had to build this, we have a really amazing client, actually the largest company in the world, Foxconn, and
Wow.
we have like I think more than 10 HoloLens applications deployed in the factory. So you want to see all these people moving around in the factory, and who has HoloLens. You can just click on the HoloLens and see what they see. So it's basically any kind of remote support use cases, and basically you see the video screen plus the virtual overlay. So you can be anywhere in the factory, actually from anywhere in the world, because you just see the factory as a small miniature model on your tabletop. But there also we had to develop our own solutions from the connections to all the sharing. So yeah, Microsoft Mesh will handle some of these problems, and obviously we are happy to develop less and faster.
Yeah, allow your developers to just focus on the problems that they need to solve. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you could change one thing on HoloLens or one of Microsoft's mixed reality services, what would that be?
It's a good question. I would from the developer's perspective, you want to develop really comfortably, and what we are facing is that currently HoloLens doesn't fit very nicely in the case if it's plugged in. So you have to just switch it around and the cable is going. And Snapchat had a really good solution for this, is that you could just put the glasses in the case, and the case had actually a battery inside. So once you've just put the glasses in the case, it started charging. So basically you can charge the case plus the glasses.
Oh, nice.
And also the connection, like once you put it in the case, it starts charging and you have to plug your computer in the case, so there is no weird cables going around. So I think that would, and also the case should be like much smaller. The first HoloLens case was super nice, the second one is a bit bulky. So from the physical point of view, I would definitely change this. And obviously we are looking for a smaller, but these are like that's where the market is going, to smaller devices, more advanced SLAM algorithms. That's something that I think it's just gonna come naturally as HoloLens 3, maybe B2C versions are coming.
Right. Where do you see the biggest added value of mixed reality for local corporations?
In general, mixed reality helps you understand complex 3D structures, and most companies are facing like the challenge to visualize some sort of CAD model. But those CAD models are normally built by engineers. So we are building those models that we want to display. So I think that's where you want to display complex structures, complex 3D structures superimposed on the real world. Like imagine that we are sitting in a room now where you have cables going around, you have pipes going around, and maybe you've designed those, but you don't remember where those are. So you just want to visualize it, or just a very simple example, like can you imagine new furniture in your living room?
It's hard. IKEA has some AR solution for that.
Yeah, exactly. So even just simple furniture, you want to see how it actually looks. So all these use cases where you want to see complex 3D structures, I think mixed reality is super helpful. And the other important thing is that you want to see it in the right place at the right time. Superimposing all these information, imagine a factory, you have loads of information in a factory or any enterprise, but you want to see it in the right time, in the right space, superimposed on the real world. Having that said, I think CAD models are still designed by humans, while if you think about the healthcare market, we still have a long way to go to fully understand how the human body works, and since it's not designed by us, there are so many variations. So I think mixed reality itself is the most helpful in the healthcare market. That's why we've spinned off a company from 360 World, which is just focusing on healthcare solutions. So imagine that when you go for a CT or an MRI, your body is sliced up to these two-dimensional images, which now doctors are scrolling and having a look at like how your body changes. And then you want to see the correlation between that pixel in that slice and the other pixel. And the way you have to do that is just basically putting these slices together, and in mixed reality you can rotate it, you can just segment it, and then superimpose it on the real person.
Wow.
So imagine like how future surgeries will be much more effective, because what you do is basically you offload the computing from the doctors, and that computing is done by the servers, and then you just see the final end image where you just need to see the tumor or whatever complex 3D structures human bodies have.
Very nice. What do you think? How mature is the Hungarian mixed reality market?
I think we are very well placed in the European space. I think we have a couple of extraordinary companies who are much faster than the others in adopting these solutions. But I think in general, we have a lot of requests from the Hungarian market.
Nice. And what about globally? Where will we be in 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, as I said, I've been watching this market for like 10 years. So first we thought back in 2014 that, okay, next year there will be the boom, next year there will be the boom, but it's much smoother transition. So we have to be aware of that. We want to place something on our head that you can wear for hours comfortably, and I think in 5 years' time, like most of the big companies will have several mixed reality applications deployed. If we're looking at Fortune 500 companies right now, statistics says that at least 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have some sort of mixed reality or virtual reality applications already prototyped or proof of concept done, and in some cases, obviously, also deployed in factories. So I think in 5 years, enterprise market will be Fortune 500 companies definitely will have probably larger, like 80-90%, have some sort of mixed reality solutions. And probably in 10 years' time, we'll have like B2C market is going to be also much more advanced. You may have heard that last week, Snapchat has introduced their first mixed augmented reality glasses, and which is definitely targeting B2C market.
Right.
And we know that Facebook is putting a lot of effort in the not just the virtual reality, because they have Oculus, but also augmented reality. So they're spending crazy amount of money in augmented reality development, and rumor says that Apple and Facebook will also just announce their glasses either this year, next year. So we know that engineering validation glasses are being produced. So I think in 10 years' time, when you go for a run or go for a bike, you will have these sorts of navigations, and not necessarily one glasses, but more like custom glasses. So for example, like when you go cycling, you want to have a cycling helmet, not a ski helmet. So I think in that sense, and when you go biking, you want to see the trails, you want to see navigation, but you want to see your friends. So if you're going into in the forest, maybe you want to see friends of yours where they are riding, and maybe connect with them, invite them for a drink or something. So and all kinds of social activities will be more synchronized, and different kinds of classes will solve these problems.
Nice. Microsoft has just recently won a nearly $22 billion US Department of Defense contract. What would you say? How can military and commercial use coexist?
Yeah, that was really surprising, I have to say. Most of you might know that there was a huge contract before this one, where everybody, the cloud contract, everybody was racing.
The Jedi contract.
The Jedi contract, yeah. And then it was like $10 billion. So it was half of that, and it was a huge race between Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. Yeah. So $22 billion is a pretty nice number, although we have to mention that it's for 10 years, so it's not instantly. And the US defense yearly budget is $720 billion. So I think a good portion of it will now go to it to actually augment and enable soldiers to see several layers of information in combat situations. So it will definitely be a huge step forward. And honestly, we were a little bit surprised why this didn't happen before, because it came pretty slow. Normally, military picks up these technologies much faster, and HoloLens was already there. And I think we were already developing for like more than a year when the first Microsoft contract with the US Defense was announced. And then this is going to drive the market much. This is a huge money where you can develop like the current version of HoloLens is which is built for military. It's more than double field of view than what we are using now. So I think naturally it will come to also the enterprise glasses. It has thermal cameras, night vision cameras, all sorts of radio communication. So it's a very advanced, but also much bulkier piece of hardware. And soldiers need to wear helmets, so you also need to incorporate that one in the form factor. But they are not really, you can put a lot of weight on a soldier. So if the glasses are more heavy, you have to deal with it. You're a soldier, come on. So I think it will accelerate the market definitely, and probably other, like all the competitor armies will need to, like Chinese, Russian, all the armies will need to somehow pick up these technologies and be competitive with these. But US numbers are just crazy. Like the spending of one army is is competitive with the next 10. So it's they have a very good ecosystem, and I think we will see these advancements in the corporate classes as well.
Nice. It was really nice talking to you. I wish you great success in conquering the mixed reality market. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our today morning session about mastering cloud migrations. My name is Károly Oravec, and I'm a cloud solution architect at IT Solutions, Deutsche Telekom IT Solutions. Today, I'm going to talk about how to master the cloud migration, about the basics, how to tackle it, and actually how to start with it and how to deal with it. Let's jump straight into the figures. We at T-Systems love figures, and if you look at this market research from 2020, you will clearly see what is our current market requirements, what are the current market requirements, especially if it comes to enterprises. So from now, the cloud-first strategy is clearly stated here, that the customers are looking for that opportunities, and also if it comes to, they already have a plenty of resources included in cloud, and those resources needs optimization. Also, from traditional infrastructure as a service, we are moving towards to more enterprise services like a database as a service or container as a service. This is very important. But if you are looking at the right side of this presentation, beside the migration, it clearly states that the applications itself are very important, and especially the relationship between them. So the application dependencies have to be addressed clearly, because imagine that kind of silly situation that you are migrating certain application to Azure, for instance, and this is a 3-layered application, and then the database part, for instance, will remain in on-premises. I think that this kind of migration scenario is a worst case. So this is why we have to really address those dependencies and make them properly designed. This is why we created our mission. This is our mission about really to provide customers, to support them on how to migrate to cloud on a global and agile way via highly automated approach. This is what we want to achieve. But from this long sentence, I would like to highlight 2 words: agility and automation. So agility means, for enterprises especially, flexibility, how to adjust to the fast growing market and the fast changing market, because in enterprises, agility means flexibility. You have to be flexible. If you are flexible, you can spin up your stuff and you can really make up to date your resources, what are the current requirements related to migrations, for instance. And also automation is a pretty straightforward, because all the repeated stuff has to be highly automated, and in that case you can save time and you can save money as well. As you can remember, or for those ones who have seen my introduction video, I was showing you the Rubik Cube. So how Rubik Cube is related to migrations in general. I was trying to referring to the complexity. So if it comes to large enterprises and the huge migrations, the overall migration project looks a bit complex at the first sight. And this is something similar to the Rubik Cube. It also has billions of starting points, and at the end, you have to think carefully how to want to start with these migrations and how to want to solve the Rubik Cube. But the Rubik Cube also can be solved on small pieces. If you divide those complex situations into small and easily adjustable tasks, that means I would like to solve the Rubik Cube one slide by another slide. Then it's something similar that I would like to migrate my applications one by one to public cloud. And in that case, you can make it much easier and efficient. This is what I would like to highlight here. Also, if you understand the customer current situation related to the cloudification, so you understand the objectives and the principles, what they would like to follow, then you can provide the real strategy and the methodology which can be used by them. And also, please bear in mind that experience is very important. If we are just talking about those kind of slides, what I'm doing, it's not enough. We have a proper expertise. We have a hands-on experience how to do this properly. And this is what you have to also consider. So how we start with this whole story? First of all, we always contacting customers and start to do a proper consultancy where they are in their cloudification journey, what they want to achieve, how they want to achieve. It might happen that they have only certain workloads in Azure, or they already using plenty of resources and services. This is always depends on the current situation, but it's very crucial to understand that current setup. Also might happen that they, for instance, using some very rarely used applications, some very one which needs some very specialized understanding and knowledge how to migrate in the cloud. So in that case, we can tackle our partner network. So we can have partners included who can do the migration of such services smoothly. Also, if it comes to legacy applications require more focus on modernization and transformation. So that means that you really have to take care of the application in general, and you have to take care of the how to modernize them either during the migration, or if you move them first to the public cloud and then start to work on to build them cloud native or something similar. And last but not least, the inside of organization that has to be a changed mindset related to public cloud. So that means that the public cloud itself is not always common or well known by the application teams. It has to be explained them properly. Why? Because if you don't have a knowledge about something, so you are a bit afraid of something, you don't know it, and that will be a blocker for you. This is a basic of our human nature. But if you explain them how the public cloud works, what are the best ways to go, how to start to use public services in a proper way, then you are in the right place, and you can make it more efficient and really working. So our cloud migration framework is based on a Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. And if you are looking at those 6 pillars here, actually, you always have to start at the beginning. At the beginning means you will start with defining the strategy. If you have a proper business case in place, so you have a full visibility of what customer wants to achieve, how they want to proceed further. For instance, they have a data center closure, so they want to make the migration quick and fast, or they are looking more for application modernization part. This has to be defined clearly. If you have that landscape overview, so you understand what they have on premises, then you can, and you do the proper assessment for that. Then you go to the planning phase. And the planning phase will really include all the necessary steps to have a proper planning about how to migrate the applications to public cloud, what kind of applications are supported by Azure, and that kind of things make it more precisely and more efficiently. But where I want to migrate those applications, so there the ready phase comes into the picture. I need to have a proper landing zone, for instance, in place. That means that the landing zone is not just one subscription. It could be a more complex situation, but really all that stuff, all the prerequisite has to be in place in order to start the migration itself. And when you do the adoption of those, for instance, virtual machines, then you have to really take care of we are not leaving them just behind us, okay? So we are not just there as it is, but we have to take care about the management. So management means that we will provide proper monitoring, for instance, proper logging, what has happened so far. If some issue comes up, then we can solve them easily. And also at the end, if it comes to any user errors, for instance, an administrator wants to spin up a monster VM, or somebody wants to create some resources in a wrong region, this can be tackled by governance. So by, for instance, using Azure policies, and then you can avoid, the user errors at all. And as you can see clearly here, those are those circles, small iterations going all around. These are highlighting really migration waves. So that means the migration wave is always repeatable task. Why? Because we are using agility to make those migrations efficient and to learn from our issues, what has happened so far, and make the upcoming migrations more smoother and more efficient. How this overall setup is aligned with our framework. So as you can see, there are some similar phrases, but maybe a bit more readable or more understandable way. We are adjusting to our services, the cloud adoption framework provided by Microsoft, and we are providing those services to you based on our expertise and based on our knowledge. I will talk about them in the next slides, actually. So here we are. What what you can see from this slide, actually, that the cloud migration factory, the cloud migration framework, which is part of the cloud migration framework, is in the middle of the story. And what I want to emphasize is the modularity of this slide. So all those dependent services are, first of all, they are depending on each other, but second, they are somehow also independent from each other. So depending on the customer background and the customer requirements, for instance, if they are at the very early stage of their cloud adoption journey, they will start to do a cloud readiness. So that means they will do the assessment, they will start to plan the landing zone, then they can order that kind of service from us. But also might happen they have a hybrid cloud already in place. So some of the workloads are put into Azure, and those workloads need some modernization. Or you are saying that the application owners or the customer itself want to do the proper migration. So I want to migrate the rest of the services to Azure. This is also possible. And also there is a third option. For instance, if most of the workloads are already in Azure and I want to get rid of the management. So I don't want to do any more management, me as a customer, and I want to just really focus on the development and the business side. Then you can choose our managed services. This is also a good option here. Let's talk about cloud assessment in general. This service is a bit underestimated, and it's not, but from the other side, it's crucial and it's very important. If you are looking from that point of view, that you are really trying to make it quicker, the assessment, and make it smaller and easy, and you put only that effort in the whole assessment part. So you want to discover the the current on-premise setup quite quickly. Then it's possible. For instance, you can import a CSV file from your existing CMDB database and put it into Azure Migrate, and then you will get a high overview about your current setup. What kind of applications do you have, and maybe in which ways can be migrated to Azure. But it can be done very quickly, but then the migration itself will take much longer. Why? Because this is, you don't have a proper planning in place. The environment is dynamically changing, so it might happen that your CMDB is not current. And then you will spend actually more time for the migrations because of those issues coming up. But if you are saying, okay, I want to spend more time and more money for assessment, that means that I will have a much better and precise overview about my current on-premise environment. And I would like to then, so I will put a proper planning there in place. I will understand what is my application landscape looks like in on-premise environment. And then that takes a bit longer. So I'm paying more for that. But the end, the migration itself will be just that part, because I had to just properly align with the application teams, and the application migration itself will be quite smoothly, because I have an exact overview about what I want to migrate, which is retired, retained, etc., etc. So this has to be considered quickly. Okay, so about our cloud migration framework, as you can see on the upper level, okay, I will show it. These ones are like a long-hanging fruits. This means that the rehosting is a typical lift and shift scenario. So you will move your virtual machines as they are into cloud. And by the way, I forgot to mention that the entity in general, so the smallest entity what we are talking about in cloud migration framework is not anymore the virtual machine itself, but the whole application. So one application can consist of plenty of VMs, 10, 5, 10, 15. But this is what we have to consider when we are talking about any kind of migration setup, any kind of planning. So we are always talking about applications in migrations. Okay, so I want to just do a rehosting, that's fine, but I want to put there some application modernization. And in that case, I should use refactoring. Refactoring means that I'm putting there some managed services. For instance, from now, I was using previously some databases inside of virtual machine, That was a typical IaaS solution, but from now I want to get rid of the management of that database. So I will migrate them to Azure SQL. In that case, Azure SQL and Microsoft itself will take care about the management part. So those kind of things can be automated, highly automated, and especially if you are involving DevOps principles, you are more efficient in that case. But might happen from customer point of view, they have some legacy applications in place. That means they need some more careful planning and more consultancy hours to be included. In that case, you will need for your team more cloud solution architect or developers to be included. Again, one example, if it comes to, for instance, replacement, when we were using previously Exchange servers, so for emailing, Exchange is a great product, but it was really used for mostly in most of the cases just for messaging, right? SMTP connectivity. But in that case, the overall system required more and more attention, more and more manageable resources. So it was taking too much time to, to manage those environments. In that case, what was the good choice? To go towards the Office 365 to Exchange Online. And you completely replace the whole software, as the whole application with the software as a service, and job's done. So it can be used quickly and in high efficiency. But also might happen that you have some legacy applications which are even not following anymore your businesses. Then you have to rethink or rebuild your applications in general. This is another approach that you can follow. This is the re-architecture or rebuilding part. When we are talking about those systems which are already in public cloud, and for instance, you have hundreds or thousands of virtual machines, and you want to take care of the management of them, you don't want to monitor them, or you don't want to troubleshoot them, then we have managed cloud services in place when you can really get that additional services and you can get rid of the management part. We will do this instead of you. So then you can choose MCS for Azure if you are interested in. It's very important to understand the maturity model. So where you are when as a customer, where you are in that cloud journey, and you have those different stages. At the beginning, of course, everybody was using data centers, a classical way. But then they were looking for a public cloud, and they were thinking about how to expand their resources to public cloud. They started to do the lift and shift migrations to Azure. And then they get that hybrid cloud benefit. So some of the resources were on-premise, some of them in Azure. And this is also good, but still at that stage, you were the customer is really just looking at the Azure as another data center. This is not the worst case scenario, but in general, there are more room for improvement. This is why we are using, for instance, refactoring. So your staff, architects, and developers started to use Azure on a proper way. They understand the advanced services, what they can be used, and they started to optimize the applications in cloud. And based on that, this was a good initiative, but the best case where you can get is to use cloud native applications. So you fully, go from the monolithic big applications to microservices, for instance, the containerization. And especially if you are involved in DevOps principles, this is the best way to go. Why? Because then you can get the highest benefit. Those applications are really only used at that, so they are only up and running when they have real usage. You have some internal triggers included that then you can dynamically scale your applications, either vertically or horizontally. And then you can really save more money. This is the best way to go. So we were talking about day systems, and we were talking about customers. And when we start a migration project, then the key message here is really to look at this story as a joint effort. So we are working together. Customers are not just paying for us, okay, do the job as you can do it and leave it as it is. No, we are working close together. And for that, of course, customers also have to provide us some resources, and they have to have a proper application team education in place. So So the application teams also have to be aware of what's going on, what's happening, what we want to achieve, what is our main goal about migrating to public cloud. But also from our point of view, the teams themselves are quite flexible. So based on the migration approach, what we want to do, so we want to do a quick lift and shift because of data center closure, then we will put more cloud engineers into the teams. But if it comes to we want to reorganize the application, so we want to do some re-architecture, then of course, cloud solution architects and developers has to be included in this story. So everything depends on the current needs. And for instance, what I would suggest we can multiply the teams. So one team should not, the member of teams shouldn't be more than 8-10 people, I would say, because then they would become too big and we will lose the focus. But also I wouldn't prefer more than 2 migration teams, because again, if we are working with more than 2 migration teams, then the overall migration may more depend on the migration dependencies, right? So you will have to wait for each other, and it might happen that some issues or errors will just came up because of the wrong scheduling, and you won't have enough time frame to migrate those applications. So this is quite important. Also from customer point of view, if we are looking at the education part, so I have to mention in enterprises the cloud center of excellence, the importance of cloud center of excellence. So this is just, imagine that this is a small organization inside of the customer organization. That means that the CCOE will consist of one big hub, or like a main hub, where all the necessary professionals who are related to any public cloud related activities are included. That could be, the application owners, the product managers, architects, etc. And those people will be put into particular hubs based on their expertise and based on their knowledge. And again, of course, we need that kind of hub that will take care of the strategy and the roadmap. But also we have to migrate those stuff. So we will use Cloud Migration Factory Hub. And also if we need to take care of the landscape. So then will be some architects put it into those hubs. And based on that, actually, it's quite flexible situation. So you can say that some of the teams will consist of only, I don't know, taste systems employees, or could be some other agile teams, included even partners. It's quite flexible, but you can somehow focus on your certain activities and don't mix them up. The whole setup is based on agility. As you can see those small circles. So the teams working based on agile mode, and they are focusing on how to improve that setup. So they are using some kind of enterprise principles from agile point of view, and this is called SAFe. So I would highly encourage you to use SAFe as a most important agile principle here. So my last slide is about to summarize that stuff. So again, the key takeaways here are, I would say, first of all, don't spend less time for assessments. So do the proper discovery, do the proper planning. Otherwise, you will take much more time for migration itself. And also educate your people, your staff, the application teams, either via CCOE or via some custom educations, but in general, they have to have a clear understanding why is good Azure for them and why they should use public cloud. Also, you have to follow the agile principles. So all those circles, repeatable circles, looks like a bit time wasting, but at the end, if you are learning from your own issues and errors, you will become more effective in that case. And also, if it comes to repeatable tasks, I'm talking about automation. So I'm thinking about automation. Automation would say infrastructure as a code or DevOps principles. This is very important. If you script something and you start to use those things and you don't have to create the scripts from the scratch, it's a crucial part again from the whole story. So hopefully I was able to help you in this story, and I would say thank you and enjoy for the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan. I'm a cloud solution architect working for Microsoft. Key area of focus is Azure applications and infrastructure. I'm much more of an infrastructure guy versus being a developer. And today what we are going to cover in the next 30 minutes is Azure Arc. If I had to rephrase what Arc is a solution which enables you to project non-Azure resources into Azure as ARM resources, which will enable you to extend Azure management solutions and services practically anywhere. Think of Azure Arc and the Azure portal becoming your single control plane for your entire IT environment. Key reasons for Azure Arc, and I would start with where we are today. Well, customers have hundreds, some of them thousands of steps. And there are diverse applications, just like there is diverse infra. Most of us, we are definitely in hybrid. Some of us are also in multi-cloud. Our applications are at the end of the day running on top of VMs, containers. Some of them are serverless. And of course, all applications have data stores based on databases. Whoops, I shouldn't have hit the wrong button. The idea with Azure Arc is that we can bring literally Azure services to an infrastructure. It could be a third-party cloud provider, could be your data center, could be a colo, could be VMware. And what we are going to focus today is primarily on the first pillar, which is how can we gain literally central visibility, operations, and compliance of our virtual machine estate. However, I will also touch briefly how we can build cloud native apps anywhere at scale on top of Kubernetes. And then on top of that Kubernetes, we can run Azure Data Service anywhere, managed instance, and Postgre. And as of last week, on top of any Arc-enabled Kubernetes, you can also run app services. And remember, wherever you have a certified deployment of Kubernetes, you can run Azure Data Service anywhere and run Azure App Services anywhere. The idea is, again, connect and operate your non-Azure resources. Here in this particular slide, I am referring to them as hybrid resources, as native resources. VMs, SQL servers, Kubernetes, so on and so forth, irrespective of where they are running, whether they are in your multi-cloud environment, on-premises, traditional brick-and-mortar data center, or at the edge. And then you run Arc-enabled services on top of this infrastructure. The idea is that irrespective of what you are doing, you project these resources into Azure. Whatever I'm going to demo today is already generally available, with the exception of Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server. That's still available as a public preview, but the rest of the services are already GA, what I'm going to cover. For Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes, and it's slightly out of scope from today's discussion, but I need to bring it up. The idea is that we connect Kubernetes clusters to Azure so that we can configure them using GitOps. And the idea of using GitOps is so that we have a desired state configuration across our estate, because now everything is visible into Azure. We can operate, monitor, govern, secure, and last but not least, deploy applications on top of it, irrespective of where Kubernetes is running. Could be on top of VMware, Stanzo, could be a GKE, or could be an EKS, could be on premises, could be OpenShift. Data services, now that we have Kubernetes Arc enabled and projected in Azure, we can deploy them on top of these clusters. So we get Evergreen SQL, the likes of Azure SQL managed instance. And same story with Azure Database for Postgre, the hyperscale version of it. Just take a note that this service is still in public preview, however you can easily run it today. Let's jump into Azure Arc for servers, which is the key focus for today's discussion. And let's start off with a very traditional customer scenario, where we have a diverse environment, let's say that this is a financial institution, could be any other business, to tell you the truth out there, which have a sprawling server-based IT system deployed across multiple data centers, hosters, multi-cloud. To tell you the truth, numbers don't really matter. I've worked on Azure Arc projects ranging from about 50 VMs to more than 1,000. Key requirements seldomly change. This sprawl becomes slightly overwhelming. I mean, the fact that you are running a hybrid cloud infrastructure is already a little bit of a pain point. Why? Because now I have two different management planes. How can I bring everything under one central management plane? And in this particular case, what we're seeing is that the customer is running a mix of bare metal, Windows, Linux, across multiple locations and on top of disparate systems. And what they want to achieve is that IT to be in a position to apply at scale governance and security policies. Think about it this way. How can I augment, for example, in the case of Windows Server Active Directory Domain Service and Group Policy to the cloud? So then I extend it to any other resource which is not Active Directory Domain joined. And last but not least is how can we also enable app owners to apply audit and remediate compliance to meet their own requirements? Because these VMs, they are running workloads. Who is managing these workloads? Key benefits is that, well, first and foremost, the minute you onboard a resource in Arc, you get asset in organization and inventory. Think about it this way. You get visibility. If I want to take it one step further via Azure policy, then I get universal governance. If I want to go deeper with monitoring, security, vulnerability scanning, performance monitoring from a metric point of view on my VM, or perhaps application performance monitoring, then I start deploying slowly but surely agents. But I deploy these agents as extensions because now my own premises or my non-Azure virtual machine is projected as an ARM resource. So I can deploy Azure extensions. And I can then deploy built-in server compliance rules, which I think there are like a good 60 of them nowadays. Key benefit, one single pane of glass with self-service remediation. And for the partners who are listening to this, you can do this at scale across all of your customers by integrating directly with Azure Lighthouse. Let's jump into a practical demo. So this is my Azure subscription. It's what I call my platform/hybrid subscription because the only resources I have running in this subscription are monitoring, Azure monitoring, and Azure Arc resources projected into this subscription. Here's Azure Arc. What we are going to cover is the servers part. Let's go down into servers. And here are my 4 servers which I am projecting into Arc. I have a domain controller, Linux VM, a management box, and a SQL server. Let's jump to the first server, the C01. With the C01, here is the resource fully projected into Azure. Because I am doing role-based access control, I can do whatever I want in this Azure resource, not inside the domain controller. So the management plane for IAM doesn't extend inside the VM. Okay, this is what I can do to the resource from a manageability point of view in Azure. I can definitely do update management. So now I have a single point of view for update management, irrespective of where my resource is running and irrespective whether it's running Windows or Linux. Inventory, change tracking, pretty much importantly, insights. And let's start with performance and come to mapping in a few seconds. Okay. CPU utilization, availability, disks, IOPS, network, so on and so forth. Map is how is my server or my services or my applications interacting with other applications. Think about it this way. How can I create quickly an up-to-date map of my existing network infrastructure? Here it is. How do I get all this? Well, first and foremost, I onboard into Arc. Let me jump back to my initial screen. And you onboard into Arc either through a single server approach, fill in the blanks, download a script, or else by creating a script similar to what you're seeing here on my screen, which supports headless authentication because I'm using a service principal client ID and the service principal secret, and I can do so at scale. It supports both Windows and Linux. Deploy the script on your resources. From there onwards, once your resource is projected into Azure, you kick in Azure policies. And in my case, Azure policies, what I'm doing is I'm deploying Azure Security Center agent with the Qualys vulnerability scanner configured, log analytics with dependency monitor, and a couple of other Azure policies related to guest configuration. And the entire list of guest config is all listed over here. I'm not going to go through it because it's an extensive list, but it's pretty much well documented. Onboarding time, I would say that you're talking, perhaps if you're doing this first time round and taking it practically a little bit easy. Worst case scenario, 20 minutes. Once my machine is onboarded, extensions get deployed, just like I deploy extensions to any other Azure resource. And because I enabled this machine for for Azure Security Center with Qualys, I can look both into the security estate of my machine, is it according to best practices, and whether or not my machine has any vulnerabilities on top of it, which I should remediate. In the case of an Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, it's still the same story. So if I go back to Azure Arc servers, here's my SQL. So that's the first step. In order to transform this Azure Arc-enabled VM into an Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, I need to run one additional script, which goes down to the database server level. So now I'm looking pretty much into the workload. Because I am looking down into the workload, I can easily visualize information related to vulnerabilities in my databases. So it's beyond the operating system, it's beyond the server, it's literally down to your data. And of course, I do have a couple of vulnerabilities, which you can see here on screen. They are on purpose, otherwise I wouldn't be able to demo anything. And besides giving you the ability of figuring out what's wrong or what's not according to best practices, how you could actually fix it. So it's pretty much in depth. On top of that, for SQL, besides vulnerability scanning, come on, really, let's do this. We can run assessments. The quality of the assessment, your roll-up security and compliance vis-a-vis SQL, and its weighted availability, performance, so on and so forth. If I go in here on enable and on for setting turn off autoplay, somewhere down the line, my Windows VM is misconfigured. And I should be deploying a group policy to remediate my vulnerability. Let me go back to Linux. Now, here's my Linux VM. Same story. I have extensions deployed on top of my Linux VM. In this case, of course, it's the OMS agent for Linux and the dependency agent for Linux, because that's what I deployed. Must be a supported distribution. I'm using Ubuntu 20.04.2. I'm tagging my resource as if it were any other Azure resource. Actually, I'm enforcing these tags using Azure policy. However, since this is not really sitting in Azure, I'm defining a physical location. In my case, I just came up with an idea. City Amsterdam, country or region Netherlands, data center is Prodo 1. From an update management point of view, here's Linux and it's missing updates. In my case, I'm lucky, I have nothing because I patched it. And here's all the patches which I have deployed. Coincidentally, it was patched this morning because I ran daily patches, and here it is. Half 8 this morning, like 2 hours ago. Where it says fail to start, that's because the virtual machine, the hypervisor that's hosting all my other VMs was switched off. If I don't need it, usually I switch off my resources, even if it's a hypervisor. Same story with inventory. However, for inventory and change tracking, I need to jump into Azure Monitor, so on and so forth. The idea is that you end up literally with an entire view of your estate, going down from applications, VMs, containers, SQL, so on and so forth. Whatever is connected to Azure. And as a reminder, we can do Azure Arc enabled VMs, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters. Those same Azure Arc enabled servers can be projected in Azure as Azure SQL, as Azure Arc enabled SQL servers, so that then we can dig deep into our database estate. HCI, of course, SQL managed instance, and Postgre running on top of Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. So the part where it says data controllers preview, that's in reality a data controller which is deployed on top of AKS. And as of last week, app services. Again, the requirement is that for app services, you need to have a Kubernetes cluster registered in Azure. Then the rest is literally identical. It's as if I'm creating a web app that will be hosted in Azure. It's still under preview, but you get the gist of it. I can run Windows, I can run Linux, I can run my own code, I can bring my own containers, so on and so forth. What would change, rather than picking up a region, you would need to pick up your own Kubernetes cluster that's projected in Azure. And you run with it. Deployment, preview, monitoring, and this is where we start enabling everything. In our case, we should enable application insights, tagging, review, create, off you go. So this is one of the most basic experience that you could use from the portal. For the developers on this call, what you can do is you can leverage stuff like VS Code, for example, or any other tooling kit which you have, GitHub, whatever. Okay. Going back to our deck. What we can do with Azure Arc enabled servers. Literally, first and foremost, reach. Irrespective of whether it's Linux, Windows, or bare metal, irrespective of whether or not it's joined to a domain. So that's number one thing. At scale, we can easily create and organize whatever resources we have running outside of Azure. And by the way, this part, the Azure Arc onboarding, which gives you visibility into your entire IT estate, doesn't cost a single cent. And like I said, it's perhaps 15-20 minutes of initial work. Then if I want to take it forward to the next level, there's governance and security. And that's where you start using the built-in Azure policies. In this particular case, the built-in Azure policies are the guest configuration policies. You can apply on top of it server security baselines. So if I go back to my Azure policies, I can see that for my Arc Linux machines or Arc Windows machines, I have the ASB deployed, the Azure Security Baseline version 2. And the only thing which I have changed in my policy, it's literally this parameter. Include Arc machines, true or false. And then it's going through all these security best practices, which is the Azure Security Baseline. It's the same baseline which you get out of the box with Security Center in Azure. Now, anytime that you switch on an Azure subscription, this is enabled by default, and it's only visible if you go through regulatory compliance. Hope it loads because it's a live demo. Of course, since it's a live demo, it doesn't want to load. But anyways, if you go to Security Center regulatory compliance, eventually ASB should load up. It's taking its time because it's a live demo, of course. So last but not least, role-based access control. Who gets to do what from an operational point of view on top of our VMs, on top of our Kubernetes cluster, on top of our data services, on top of our application services. And do remember that you can do this at scale by direct integration with Lighthouse. Azure enabled SQL Server, as we've seen, what it gives you is literally a searchable inventory of not just your SQL servers, but the databases that are running on top of your SQL servers, including an in-depth assessment service. And it ties up directly with Azure Policy and Azure Defender, i.e. there's no need to migrate anything. And just to reiterate, okay, here is ASB, pretty much visible here. In the case of Azure, in the case of Azure Arc enabled SQL, it will be projected in here as if it's any other resource. In fact, it's telling me SQL vulnerability assessment, none, no issues, because there is nothing which is unprotected. The way I'm working is literally through Azure. I'm just deploying my policies. Now, if we had to do this really properly, and I'm pretty sure that this has been mentioned quite a couple of times already, where do we initially start from? If we want to take this way beyond like a small sandbox, if I had to do this in production, I would start with the cloud adoption framework for hybrid and multi-cloud, which starts off first and foremost with strategy. If I had to rephrase strategy, it's nothing more than a couple of basic questions. Why do I need this? What is the trigger? What is the motivation? Perhaps it's because I have lack of visibility. Lack of visibility equals lack of control. Lack of control equals lack of governance. Measurable business outcomes. If I deploy Arc, if I onboard my resources on Arc from a business point of view, what do I expect to get? Centralized governance, visibility across my entire IT estate and applications. Next, you move to plan. Plan is, in strategy, you define the scope. It's going to be my 10 VMs sitting on VMware as a starting point. How do I roll it out? Am I going to roll it out manually as an agent, or I'm going to create a script similar to what I've already showed you guys? Something like this. How am I going to do RBAC? How am I going to create my resource groups in Azure? Which policies am I going to test? Then you move to ready. Ready is making sure that I am ready as an organization. I have some processes already in place, but also from a skilling point of view. What do I need to know to operate Azure Arc? Last but not least is, what about the environment? What about the Azure environment itself? And my recommendation would be create a landing zone in Azure, either leveraging Azure blueprints, Terraform, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, that is hybrid ready. And in order to make it hybrid ready, just make sure that you are enabling Arc policies, Arc related policies. Once you're done, you go into the operational aspect, which is manage and govern. If you've done a really good job at the ready part where you've defined your policies, like I've done myself. So in my case, the minute a non-Azure resource hits my Azure subscription and hits a particular resource group, in this case, the resource group, it's called Resource Group Hybrid Arc West Europe 001. These policies kick in. Once these policies kick in, I onboard automatically my virtual machine into additional services like security, monitoring applications, and so on and so forth. Plus, on top of that, I also gain visibility into what is against best practice. I mean, if everything was green, then I wouldn't even bother looking at it. What I'm after is whatever stuff is out of compliance. Compliance can take up to sometimes 24 hours, depending on how you're deploying the resources. And that's how you operate it. And that would be the initial wave. And I call this the build, measure, learn, because every time you're going to do this, you're going to learn new stuff. You're going to learn more about your environment. You're going to learn more about Azure. You're going to learn more about which processes you should fine tune. At the end of the day, it's so that you are in a position where you can optimize these workloads, these non-Azure workloads projected into Azure by applying best practices. To quickly get you started into the Azure Arc world, there's Azure Arc Jumpstart. I'm not going to read this from a slide, but Azure Arc Jumpstart is literally jumpstart scenarios. Click and deploy whatever scenario you have. So the demo that I've been showing you right now, you can easily get up and running by following the Azure Arc Jumpstart. But there's also, as of last week, the Jumpstart Arc box, which is literally anything Arc with a one-click deployment. And this is what you get. Actually, it's way more than I have demoed you. The key requirement, as you can see, is an Azure VM. So you can easily run or test Azure Arc by leveraging Azure VMs, because there's a technology called nested virtualization. That's what it's doing. Okay, and because now we're running Azure VMs with nested virtualization, I can run Kubernetes, I can run AKS on HCI, so on and so forth. Then I can project them into Azure because they are all Arc resources. With this, I thank you folks for your time and your attention. The folks from the team will be sharing with me your questions and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
My name is Martin. I'm a lead architect for Microsoft Cloud Solution with MT Systems. And today I will try to give you some insights how we can deal with all the stuff in comparison to a journey. So let me start. I will start my timer as well due to the fact that roughly 25 minutes is a little bit too less time to explain everything. Therefore, we are not able to get into every detail, but I hope you will get at least 1 point out of the session. So let's start. So from my point of view, I think if we are talking about a journey, and let's expect you will visit or you are going to visit a foreign country, you have to think about some laws. I'm able to use my driver's license to rent a car, or is there something specific related to my clothes and so on. And therefore, this is something what you have seen as well within Azure. So we are talking for each and every customer about different rules, regulation, compliance, policies, and so on. And I think the most important thing on this is you have to know a lot from your business point of view. Like Jorzsits mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and how important it is to plan carefully the whole thing, I think it's starting with this point. Know the expectations. So expectation management is one of the key elements. And therefore, the thing is where we would like to go. So if we are now looking on the side, we have on the left-hand side the security, compliance, and manageability. And on the right-hand side, we want to have the efficiency. And this is something where you can say, okay, I am also able to reach all the security, compliance, and efficiency with manual approach. So I can do this as well if I'm going to use the Azure portals, for example, and start and building everything on my own. But this is not what we are going to do. What we are, or what we want is this one. So we have the goal that our efficiency is very high and we meet all the security, compliance, and manageability requirements. So therefore, it starts with a good planning. And then the first stop will be on our tour, the Azure hierarchy, know your target. And this is something where I would like to jump to one thing and explain briefly what you will get from Microsoft at the beginning. So if you start with such an Azure journey, you will get an Azure tenant. You can build your own Azure subscription. And in this case, I've created 3 ones. And the thing is, so let's show everyone. I've created 3 subscriptions. And let's have a look in one of them. And we will see in the resource group, it's empty. So we have nothing defined from the Microsoft point of view. They provided empty subscription. So what does it mean on the other hand? You have to take care on everything on your own. So therefore, the hierarchy, I would say, is something what is the main part, which needs to be part of the planning at the beginning. So Jonathan also mentioned the cloud adoption framework, and this is what I would highly recommend to everyone to have a look on this. It is a pretty comprehensive documentation, and it will be updated regularly. Therefore, it's definitely worth to have a look on this from time to time. And if we are now thinking about the different elements, so strategy and plan have already been mentioned by Jonathan, but now let's have a look a little bit more on the ready phase. And the main point on this phase is, from my point of view, the hierarchy. So how you organize your Azure resources. And on the top, we see Microsoft has defined such kind of element, organizational elements like management group. Then we have the subscription, we have resource groups, and at the end, we have the resources itself. So what do we want to do? So such a management hierarchy should reflect the organizational requirements. So it can be that the management group hierarchy, for example, reflects the different divisions within your company. It could be that it will reflect geographically differences and so on. Why we are using management groups at all? So the thing is, with management groups, I have the opportunity to assign, for example, permissions or policies on the management group. That means each and every subscription below that management group will inherit these settings. So if I define the IT department should get access to each and every subscription within my whole company as a reader, or if I have someone from the security department who needs to read access from a security point of view on each and everything, and we can assign this on the management group, and you don't have to care about the assignment on the subscription, resource group, or resources. So this is something what definitely is a pretty important thing. And in my experience during the last couple of years with a lot of different customers, from different sizes, from small customers to enterprise customers, I think this part, the Azure hierarchy, is one of the, how I should phrase it, I would say one of the least maintained components within the Azure management. And it's, from my point of view, pretty important. How we can get something like an Azure hierarchy up in a couple of seconds. So let's quickly jump into the Azure portal, and I do this a little bit freestyle. So let's hope that everything is working. So give me 1 sec. Let's open the Cloud Shell. And let's wait a couple of seconds. And I've created a pretty easy Terraform template to create the Azure hierarchy. So if we are now moving to the management groups, we will see there is nothing in there except the tenant root group. Let's change to the right folder. And then let's do a Terraform plan to have a look on the Terraform files which I've created. It will take a couple of seconds, and then we can deploy this. So we see that 9 different things are going to be added. Let's do a Terraform apply. Something will happen as well in a few seconds. And then we should be able to say yes. And now Terraform will take care of this behind the scenes, that all the Azure hierarchies that have been defined within this Terraform file is created. So how we can now continue during the time this is created, the hierarchy, I think the next important thing is that we have to get familiar with our surroundings. So it's definitely a difference if you are on a vacation and you are more in a city or you are in the rainforest. So everything is different. And this is something what also Microsoft covers pretty good in their cloud adoption framework. So if we now jump back to the cloud adoption framework and have a look on the considerations how such a landing zone should be designed. So I think one of the key elements is something like the governance, naming standards, the subscription design, and so on. And if we have a closer look on it and dig deeper into it, such elements, the picture represents a landing zone. What is a landing zone? The landing zone itself, I would describe it as a container which is ready, prepared for hosting productive applications and resources. So without a proper landing zone design, it's pretty hard to cover all the elements. But how we can get to this level? So let's dig into it a little bit more in detail. Microsoft has two different aspects of landing zones, and this is now the enterprise scale landing zone architecture. And if we are having a look on it, we see we have the management group structure, which we are currently creating behind the scenes, and then we have different subscriptions. And in this element, we see we have an identity subscription related to all the identity services, for example, domain controllers, and other elements related to this. Then we have a management subscription with, for example, the logging capabilities, which is deployed there. Then we have a connectivity subscription, so the typical hub and spoke hub subscription in this case. And then we have the different landing zones. And the landing zone then represents the actual workload subscription where the workloads are located. And for me, it's pretty important that this is a recommendation from Microsoft. Does this reflect each and every requirement from a customer? I would say definitely not. So each and every customer is different. So therefore, we have also to think about adjustments on this. So it could be that the landing zones and the hierarchy looks completely different. But what's important from my end is we should take care that we should not deploy a subscription for each and every application. So, and there is this approach, and it's a little bit outdated, I would say. Maybe there are some other opinions within this round, but before Azure introduced the Azure Resource Manager, there was the ASM, so the Azure Service Manager. And this was then limited from the role assignment. So that means with a subscription, you were only able to define the boundaries of the management capabilities in the ASM world. Today, we have all the options on the actual or the single resource. That means if you want to restrict access to a resource, you can create this role-based access control assignment on a precise resource. And that means that we have all the capabilities in place that we can host several resource groups, several resources from different applications, from different teams within my division, for example, within one subscription. Otherwise, it will be pretty hard to get all these subscriptions managed and also maintained. So each and every subscription has a little bit of maintenance in there. So also Microsoft is now driving this policy-driven subscription compliance. And it's a pretty good way, but from my end, I think there is still some points where a subscription management also from the internal or the customer side, the process side wise, which needs to be covered. Therefore, reduce the landing zones as good as you can to divide everything within your company. Okay, so jumping back to the management group, have a refresh, and now we should see that we have now a defined Azure hierarchy in place with different subscription in different management groups. So as I said, a management group, for example, now can be used to assign the access control on the all underlying resources and subscription, but as well policies as well. And I think the policies is one of the key elements which it needs to be pretty good planned. So like Jonathan already mentioned in his talk as well, related to the Azure Arc elements, we have so many definitions in there provided by Microsoft that you can have a look on this and define what is useful for my implementation. And we see PCI, we see ISO related policy initiatives, but we see as well a lot of single policies as well, where you can then mix and match it up. And if it's not fitting to your requirements, you can build policies on your own. Okay, good. So I've already explained a little bit about the landing zone for workloads. And yeah, the thing is, check out the main site. So have a closer look how the monitoring looks like and so on. And how we can now apply such a landing zone is a pretty good question. So I would say we have a bunch of opportunities and possibilities to do this. For example, we can use blueprints to deploy a landing zone. We can use Terraform, what I've done for the management, the Azure hierarchy. But we can do this as well with Azure ARM, PowerShell, Azure CLI, CI/CD pipeline. So there are, I would say, almost limitless options to build such a landing zone. And each and every technology has its advantages and disadvantages. So from my end, I'm used to use different technologies, but for example, Terraform and Azure ARM templates have also some disadvantages if someone is willing to influence the configuration from their end. For example, if someone is allowed within a subscription to build their own subnets within a VNet, then I would say Terraform and ARM templates are not the best way to go, due to the fact if someone is reapplying this template, the subnets could be deleted, or the NSGs and so on. So there are some dependencies which you have to check out via a POC and test everything in detail. But now let's do a quick deployment and deploy such a landing zone. And the talk is roughly 25 minutes only. And if we are happy, we can deploy everything in this time. So let's do this one. So Microsoft is also providing a lot of templates within their cloud adoption framework, and I really like them. And maybe they are not fitting to each and every customer situation, but you can have a look on this and pick the best out of it and then adjust it to your own requirements. So let's start with this enterprise scale for small enterprises. So let's do this one, I would say. So this one already opens the Azure portal. I clicked on deploy to Azure. So, and let's select a region. Let's say West Europe. Let's call it Big Azure Day. No, that is not the best acronym, I would say. Let's call it demo. Then we have some platform configuration. So that means let's deploy a log analytics workspace, how long the data should be stored in the log analytics workspace, and which subscription I should use as a platform subscription. Let's use the platform one. Sounds reasonable. And then I can select different options. And yeah, so let me also enter my email address, and let's go to the next one. Let's create the virtual hub. The address space is already pre-populated, but I can change it as well. Let's use West Europe. So DDoS protection will not be enabled. Deploy a VPN gateway, I think that will take a little bit too long in this case, but I think that's also pretty good already. Then let's select a online landing zone for the workloads. They are following the example I've shown on the slide, on the web page, and then the corp landing zone. And I can now also define several policies which are going to be applied. So for example, let's ensure that Azure VMs are enabled for Azure Backup, prevent inbound RDP from the internet. And this is only a quick one. Then let's have a review and create this environment. And in the meantime, we can dig into several other aspects of the deployment. So hope that everyone is still following and it's not too boring for all the experienced cloud architects in the course. So happy to have you there as well. So nice to see you. I would really like to click on create before switching to the next topic. So give the system a sec, otherwise I have to do this afterwards. Okay, good. So next point then, due to the load time of the Azure web page, is build and deploy solutions with infrastructure as code. So this is something where I'm not going to show something in the portal. This is something what I would like to share my experiences with you. So I have seen so many customers who started the usage of Azure, and there are several application teams working with Azure. There are the infrastructure guys who started with a small POC, but we all know that from a POC to productive, it's a fluent transition, I would say. So therefore, it's not the best idea to start with something what you are not planned carefully. So therefore, all the stuff I would suggest, please, or I would recommend that you definitely should use infrastructure as code. As an example, if you are building up a solution with several Azure resources integrated. So if we are talking about an Azure VM as a backend, for example, with some specific application, with bring your own disk encryption, with specific elements on it. And if you are creating this via the portal, yeah, it's doable. Yes, of course. Is it doable rapidly and at scale? If you are going to say, okay, I would like to deploy this application as well in another subscription. I have a prod subscription, but I have also dev, test, int, pre-prod, whatever. You have always built it up on your own again and again. And with infrastructure as code, you have all these capabilities in there that you can describe this solution, and then it will be deployed in a couple of seconds. And this is a pretty helpful way, and I can share my experience with you. And also with customers, they started with such an, yeah, I've tried it and I built it with the portal. This is something what then blocks them afterwards. Therefore, please use any kind of solution which you will to use. For example, Terraform, ARM templates, Ansible, Chef Puppet, what's on there. But please use a pretty experienced or pretty available descriptive language to deploy your infrastructure as code into Azure. So therefore, this is something what I would like to show at the end. And yeah, due to the time, I would say thanks a lot to you. But let's quickly have a last look on this. Let's click on create, that we have the landing zone deployed afterwards. And last but not least, everything what I've shown is also available as a product from T-Systems. So we have built all the recommendations from the Cloud Adoption Framework, all the management capabilities from the level of foundation where we say you can maintain the resources on your own, up to the advanced level where T-Systems is taking over the responsibility as a product. If you are interested in, check out this webpage, have a closer look on it. And yeah, with this, I would like to end my session. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the last session of the Big Azure Day, which is a panel discussion. I'm here in the studio surrounded by physically and virtually 4 experts from 3 countries. And without further ado, let's jump in and start with our first questions. So colleagues, please introduce yourself shortly and tell us what is your favorite part of your job you are really passionate about. Martin, if you could start, please.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so for me as a lead architect for Microsoft Cloud Solutions within T-Systems, I have been responsible for several areas. And one of the areas was the design of the managed cloud services for Azure for T-Systems. So that everything what we have heard today is part as a solution, and that was a pretty interesting thing. But on the other hand, I'm also responsible for heading and helping customers into the cloud. So it's pretty interesting, and the best thing for me is you will never stop learning. So it's a great opportunity for myself to be on the edge the whole time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to follow Martin?
Yeah, sure. So hi all. I'm Mark, a cloud solution architect here at Microsoft. Actually in Microsoft's partner team. And with my peers, we spend our days by helping the local partners in their technical issues, design new cloud architectures, assisting them in migration projects, and scaling the technical resources at the partners. HoloLens is my second hat, and obviously I'm doing it because I see a huge potential in this area, and I love these futuristic solutions. So this is one of my best part of my position and job at Microsoft.
Okay, anyone?
I'll take next. Hi guys, I'm Jonathan. Just like my colleague Mark, I'm a cloud solution architect, also working for partners in Microsoft, where I've been working, I guess, for the last 8+ years. Always focused mainly on Azure and always working with partners. And prior to joining Microsoft, I spent 14 years of my life as a partner. So I'm kind of a partner's best advocate. Been focusing on Azure primarily, infrastructure, security, governance, so on and so forth. And what makes me tick, what makes me really passionate, we have a changing ballgame around technology, seeing partners successfully migrate our customers, and hearing everybody go, wow, it really works. It really works that way. So that's what makes me tick from a passionate point of view every single day, I would say.
Thank you very much. Károly.
Yeah, thank you, Árpád. So I'm also a cloud solution architect, to be honest, and I've been working in a company for 2 years now here in Hungary, Hungarian subsidiary. Before that, I've been living in Ireland, so abroad, and then I actually joined Microsoft as a cloud solution architect. Then I started to work with Azure. And actually about my passionate, I would say that it's about when you are doing the consultancy part with the customers to build that trusted advisor relationship. When you are getting to that stage, when you can really emphasize them and encourage them about the proper, services, the proper applications, what should they use, and we have that level of trust that we can work together efficiently. So this is my main message.
Thank you very much. And let's talk a bit more on the cloud, on our journey to the cloud. With all the experience you have gained with cloud computing during the years, what do you think? What was the biggest blocker of cloud adoption 5 years ago, and what is it now, if there is any? Jonathan, please.
Okay, I'll take that. So I would say if I go back in history, it was very much the fear of the unknown. What is cloud? But in reality, once you start funneling down the right questions to your customers and partners, it was simply a matter of who has access to my data, where is my data, who owns my own data. It was very much the fear of the unknown. Nowadays, it's much more of a case, hey, Microsoft, a partner, I have a good idea of what Azure is and what it means for my business. How can I get there? Now it's much more of a matter of how, and sometimes also the what around which parts of their business functions can be moved to the cloud. So it's quite a leap, I would say. I kind of hate saying it, but I'll say it. COVID, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on which angle you're going to look at it, accelerated the maturity of our discussions around cloud because people were kind of forced to learn more. That's my 2 cents on that.
Interesting. Okay, who would you like to be the next one?
Yeah, I can go next. So, from my understanding, all the point Jonathan made is absolutely right. And I have the feeling that, especially in Germany, there was this fear related to regulations, law, data privacy was always a blocker. And nowadays, the companies are way more, yeah, I have to deal with the situation. It's the future, and I don't have an opportunity to come around this. So they have to walk into this direction. And all the customers I'm working with are now pretty happy that they are able to do so and that they can accelerate and go a step higher in the maturity level of cloud usage. And this is absolutely what I would like to see for all the other customers out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Security is absolutely an issue, or the fear from security or insecurity that my data is somewhere else. But most of the time, this is lasting till the first ransomware attack on premises. So when one of our customers is attacked on premises, that the on-premises environment is attacked, that accelerates their cloud migration very much. So the next thing they will start on the next day is, okay, how can we move to the cloud now and outsource our security from on-premises to somewhere else who is doing that for us? Because, I mean, there are huge companies around the world, but Microsoft, for example, has more than 3,000 person in their security team focusing on just the security of Azure. So it's a different game.
Maybe when you are talking about, so when I was putting some notes about this particular question, I was also the first word what I used, it was fear. It was very interesting. So that means in the past, organizations in general, they didn't understand what is the nature of cloud and how we should proceed with that and how we should, really use it. But now these days I see more about agility. So they put some of the workloads already in cloud, but for application owners, it's again some kind of challenge to modernize their applications and to put them on that way that would be more usable from public cloud point of view. So they would say that, okay, I'm good. I put in my workloads into Azure, but this is still not the end of the journey. So I think currently we are facing with this kind of issues.
So it looks like that still we need some plans, and now there is a willingness on the customer side that they would like to move to the cloud big time and very heavily. Nowadays, when we go to LinkedIn, we can find a lot of articles about cloud strategy. What do you think? What does it mean for a company having a cloud strategy in 2021? And what do you think? What is the right motivation for a company starting its cloud journey today? Károly?
Thank you. So I think in general, the cloud strategy is highly depending on the maturity model. So that means that every customer has a different stage in their public cloud journey. And based on that, they should align on a different strategy. That means some of them are already in cloud. They are using some hybrid cloud, for instance, but some of them are really just thinking about how to proceed further. And this is why we have to always adjust to the current situation. What do they have in place? But maybe the main message about the strategy or the focus where they have to be, it's about application modernization. This is my understanding. So it's always everything about applications themselves, how we can make them more cloud native and all that stuff. This could be a motivation for them as well, as I said in my previous. Cool.
Okay, interesting. And Martin, what do you think about this topic?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely with Károly, but I would go a step back and I would say, let's get rid of the thinking of IT in this cloud strategy world. So it's pretty important that it's a business decision, how they would like to use the cloud. What are the really values that they will get out of it? And therefore, I think it's not only a lift and shift or application modernization topic. It's more how the cloud can accelerate my business, how I can bring everything together. And it's also not only a technical change, it's also a cultural change within the company. And this is a pretty important thing.
Okay. Colleagues in the call, what do you think about this topic? Jonathan?
Yeah, if I would have to add to this, definitely the world, at least our little part of the world, which is Central Eastern Europe, is predominantly hybrid. It varies on a country by country basis, but I would say it's predominantly hybrid. But what I would say is that the adoption of public cloud as we know it, it's accelerating. What many customers, through the help of our partners, are doing nowadays is that they are adopting very much a business first approach. Why cloud? What transformation is it going to come from the cloud, into my business by adopting the cloud? What are the measurable business outcomes? So when we talk about agility, which is a buzzword frequently too commonly used in the cloud, for customers, agility is the ability of spinning up resources yesterday. Because on premises, what these customers do every day is a Black Friday, which doesn't make that much financial sense. So you're not really that agile. Something else, what we see, especially here that I am based in Malta, which is like literally a rock bang in the middle of the Mediterranean. We have huge multinationals, where for them, the ability of spinning up resources in which they are going to host their workloads across continents, leveraging infrastructure as code, that's like a no-brainer, but it's also a game changer. But still, it all started from what's in it for my business. So that is where I would say that where we've seen the biggest shift in mentality. Rather than going, cloud is cool, let's try and use the cloud from a technology point of view. Now it's what's in it for my business. And that is driving adoption from a very, very successful point of view, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mark, is there anything you would like to add to the conversation?
Everything was covered, I think, on this topic. But yeah, what I see here in Hungary in the field is absolutely that the question about why do I need the cloud has transformed in the past couple of years, has transferred to, okay, but how do I need the cloud? So we are not talking about if they need it, but how they or what they need it, what they need from the cloud. Not always, not everything, but the question about I mean, we are going to the customers and saying that, hey, here's the cloud, you need this, that they are coming to us that, okay, we need the cloud. How should we get started?
Yeah. So it looks like that business strategy is the real first step for most of the companies, and then they can start the real adoption. Okay, let's start talk about it, something else. Mixed reality. How Microsoft positions mixed reality. To me, sometimes it looks like an R&D journey for the company, but I guess there is a bigger vision behind that. And my second question would be connected to this: is that how mixed reality is integrated to the other portfolio elements of Microsoft. Mark, if you would.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Sure, it started as an R&D project back in the days, but currently mixed reality is a decently sized organization inside Microsoft, connected to the whole sales and marketing organization. So during the past 3 to 4 years, we have built a huge worldwide partner network focusing on shipping mixed reality solutions to our customers. And actually, we have multiple cloud-powered mixed reality solutions running as customers in production today in Hungary. So it's not just an R&D project anymore. And as we have talked about with Zsolt, Microsoft, on the Fireside chat, Microsoft just received a $22 billion US Department of Defense contract for the usage of mixed reality solutions in the US military, which is more than twice as big as the enormous Department of Defense cloud contract. So not really, mixed reality is not an R&D project at Microsoft anymore. We see mixed reality as one of the next transformation, just as the digital transformation was and actually is currently, and as quantum computing, for example, will be in the future. With the advancements of this technology in the next 10 to 15 years, we can potentially get rid of that world where we use computers and displays and phones everywhere, smartphones, because we have just a glass and glasses and we can transfer any surface into a display. And answering your second question, as we talked about Microsoft Mesh, we have multiple Azure services focusing on mixed reality, from remote rendering, allowing huge high-quality 3D models to be rendered in the cloud and then streamed to the device, and to, for example, object anchors, which gives us the power to automatically align 3D content to physical objects. And to Microsoft Mesh, we have talked a lot about earlier. And on the other hand, to help our customers with limiting the time to value, getting out of mixed reality, Dynamics 365 solutions are now integrated with mixed reality, creating solutions like Remote Assist, which is helping technicians cut down costs and support field service remotely, or Guides, which helps employees train more effectively. To sum it up, in the past years, we have invested a lot of time and energy finding the place of mixed reality and particularly HoloLens in our portfolio and organization. And as far as you see, we have found a lot of potential great connections.
So it is really good to see how passionate you are, about mixed reality. I just wanted to ask others in the call, do you have the same feeling? Is this the next big thing in cloud computing, or in Europe? Maybe we are not quite there. What is your feeling when you are discussing cloud with your customers?
Pretty good question. So I think it's a specific element out of the cloud, which is very important for a lot of manufacturers and so on. And I think this is definitely something where I see a lot of requests from the customers, but unfortunately, I'm not the right guy into this direction, and therefore I'm pretty curious also about the future, which Mark will show us maybe in the next year's Big Azure Day.
Okay. Any other comments, guys, from you in the studio?
Nothing from my side. That was a quite deep and detailed.
Okay. Jonathan already mentioned a topic which is definitely interesting for the systems at Deutsche Telekom as well, and of course for a lot of other customers and integrators. What do you think about multi-cloud? Do you see this is a common setup with your customers? And what Microsoft thinks about it as a hyperscaler vendor? So is it something you support, or it is your enemy? Because you are also a big cloud vendor. Anyone can start.
Look, multi-cloud is very much a reality, especially where I'm based in Malta. So Malta, we have plenty of online gambling operators, and they have, for many, many reasons, some of them being technical, other ones might be regulatory. They have been operating in multi-cloud for at least 4 to 5 years. So it is a reality. What is multi-cloud? I mean, at the end of the day, it's customers leveraging the best of the best across many vendors. But on top of multi-cloud, there's also hybrid cloud, which is running some of my workloads in Microsoft Azure and some other workloads, perhaps in a data center hosting provider like T-Systems or on premises in my data center. Now, where do we excel or where do we shine at Microsoft? I would say through Azure Arc, because what Azure Arc brings to the table is the ability to manage all of our resources, whether it's data, whether it's applications, whether it's Kubernetes servers or SQL servers, from a single pane of glass. And that single pane of glass being portal.azure.com. So that is the biggest game changer. And to add more to it, as of last week, now you can also run Azure App Services on any Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. So multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud, it's all being brought all together and stitched up and presented in Azure. That is what the enabler is nowadays.
Okay, thank you very much. And what the system thinks about that? Károly, Martin, any one of you who would like to start?
Yeah, maybe I can continue. So it's a tough question because we are all in Microsoft related stuff. But to be honest, so our customers are, previously they were choosing like a multi-vendor support because of avoid vendor locking. But that's somehow changed because we are not focusing more on infrastructure, we're focusing on applications. So now the decisions are made by application teams and not by a infrastructure engineer. So this is somehow what I see as a change, but also from a technical and from service level point of view, I see that Microsoft did a very good job in, at least if it comes to, the application teams at the beginning are always just comparing what I can get the most from Azure, for instance. And from that point of view, it's much easier for them to compare those services provided by Azure via what they have in on-premise environments. So in that case, at the beginning, I would say definitely Microsoft is a better choice to start with because it's easier to adopt and easier to understand for them that part of the story. So this is what I see so far. It's still definitely a valid choice, I would say so.
Martin, what's your 2 cents?
Yeah, so I think for the customers I'm working with, so multi-cloud is the reality. So if I like it or not, that's a definite thing. But I think the point Jonathan made is a pretty valid one due to the fact that the management of the different workloads in different places is a key aspect. And I think Microsoft did with Azure Arc a fantastic job. And I'm looking forward to see more in this direction. But for me, the reason why the customers are still going for this multi-cloud and also have the trade-off for more management effort on this is the vendor lock-in. So a lot of customers are still afraid of a vendor lock-in, and therefore they spread their workload on several clouds. And I think it's good. And if we have a management plane on top, like Azure Arc, it's fantastic.
Mark, anything to add? Your end?
In my opinion, for us, the most important thing is that our customers are happy at the end of the day. So if they don't want to use some advanced cloud native solutions because of vendor locking fears, we will help them use cloud vendor independent containers and infrastructure services. And in case they plan to have their business continuity and disaster recovery environment on a different hyperscaler, for example, for high availability reasons, it's also a supported scenario. Obviously, on the other hand, we won't help as cloud architects. We won't help in migrating stuff outside of Azure or from Azure to somewhere else. But yeah, that's obviously not something that we do.
Thank you very much. Talking about partners and system integrators, we have two colleagues in this round representing Telecom. Guys, what do you think? What does T-System think about cloud adoption as a system integrator? What is your differentiator comparing to other system integrators? Martin, if you could say a few words on that.
Yeah, first of all, I think customers really need a system integrator due to the complexity what the Microsoft cloud portfolio brings. So it's an easy thing that Microsoft always says cloud is easy. I think from my personal view, it's complex and it will be complex in the future. And therefore, you need a system integrator who is dealing and working with Microsoft so closely like we as T-Systems do. And this is definitely one differentiator what I see, that we are working so closely with the engineering teams in the private previews, and that we are heading into the right direction and help also Microsoft in the development of new features. And this is something what I really see as one advantage of us.
Yeah, so from my point of view, what I see, I would make a big relation related to Azure we have unlimited resources. Well, I would say that in T-Systems, we have plenty of resources. I mean, from people point of view, and we have a quite good expertise there. So I think that we have more than 2,000 certified people. That this is just, of course, theory. So we have to add beside the theory, we have to add the practice part as well. But we did plenty of good migrations related to mission critical workloads and related to even deciding on more specific markets like industry related stuff. So this is where we can add our expertise and our knowledge. And this is maybe why we somehow a bit differentiated from other partners.
During these migrations, based on what you have seen, and this goes for everyone, say, what is the average ratio you see between the simple migrations, we call them usually lift and shifts, and the more complex workload migration or workload transitions, like refactoring or re-architecture? Is it changing somehow? The customers are getting, I don't know, more into the complex versions, or they still do lift and shifts?
Both of them, but mostly I would say for enterprise customers, it's at the beginning they start with lift and shift, and of course our approach is again what we are doing, putting them to cloud, because then they become more familiar with those advanced services, and then we can start the application modernization part. So maybe at the beginning lift and shift just to get the flavor of the public, and then later, and especially if it comes to smaller customers, then they start to work immediately on application modernization. So they start to do cloud native because it takes more time, but at the end they immediately understand the benefits of the cloud native applications. This is what I see from that point of view.
Anyone?
As something that we see here is that there are a lot of customers that started their lift and shift migration back years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and now they are at that stage of maturity stage that they are now migrating from their cloud shifted lift and shifted cloud architecture, infra architecture to some cloud native architecture, because as Károly said, they see the potential, the added value of cloud native solutions, that they don't need to maintain the increased productivity of developers and so on and so forth. So yeah, what I see is that I see the acceleration in application modernization and cloud native migrations, what we have seen back in the early days of cloud lift and shift migrations, or more simple cloud migrations.
Martin.
Yes, the goal, I think, is that the customers now realize that the maturity curve within the cloud is a complete different one than on premises, and they want to bring both things together. On the one hand side, it's the business, and on the other hand, it's IT. and it should be one. And therefore, it's exactly what I see as well, that a lot of customers started with lift and shift. But nowadays, also, if I'm talking to new customers which are starting with their cloud journey, they mostly also think how I can start already with this application transformation and how to bring all the best things on the table.
Jonathan?
I would agree. So for me, predominantly it's been everybody starts with lift and shift. And again, perhaps it's because I've been working with Azure for the last 7 years. But the process or the journey, it's definitely lift and shift, or as some customers might say it, making sure that we keep the lights, the green lights on, so that then we can focus on transformation. Because once you are in the cloud, people are curious. Once you're there, and you're literally in the out, you get more comfortable. The barriers of the unknown, slowly but surely, you start breaking them down. And that by itself, it accelerates. Typically, customers, they go in after first resiliency, they do cost optimization, security, then they start slowly but surely refactoring. Like, let's move from a database in a VM to database as a service. Because that's a quick win. I can demonstrate a quick win both to my business and to my technical folks. Then re-architecting.
Interesting. And as a last question or last topic to be covered, how do you see the evolvement of the public cloud market in Europe comparing to other parts of the world? Are we slower than, I don't know, US or maybe faster in some cases? Is Germany still very conservative? What do you think, colleagues? Anyone can start.
Yeah, so for the Germans, I can say they are still a little bit anxious for the new ones, and still the data privacy stuff is something what is still one concern. And I think with all the GDPR topic, it was definitely the right direction, but still also with other regulations which changed in the past, it was challenging again to convince some pretty conservative customers. But also we see with this announcement from Microsoft that they are changing the overall platform operations, that every data will be hosted and operated in the European Union in the future, end of next year. I think it's definitely the right path that we can convince every customer that the cloud is the right platform to go for. And otherwise, there are also a lot of companies in Germany, so don't get me wrong that all of them are a little bit behind. But I think in comparison to other countries in Europe, we are maybe a little bit slow.
Okay. Who would like to be the next one? What about Central Europe? What do you think about Hungarian market? You both worked with Márk on the Hungarian market before. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at those advanced services, especially when you are talking about all the new fancy stuff provided by Microsoft, I think at least in Hungary we are a bit behind of this current from the current situation provided or led by Microsoft. But and especially there is a huge gap from public sector point of view. What I see. From other part of Europe, for instance, the Scandinavians are far beyond us. I would say they are really leveraging the cloud in proper way, and there are plenty of startups in place. So those kind of smaller companies are much more confident with cloud. If you're going back to us in Hungary, I would say there are a room for improvement for us, but we are on a good way. So definitely we are moving from IaaS solutions towards something more managed based on more advanced services.
Okay, Márk.
Yeah, absolutely. Central and Eastern Europe is a little bit slower than Western Europe and the US. But if we are talking about smaller companies or startups, I had the opportunity to work a lot with startups. Here at Microsoft now, I'm working with the Microsoft for Startups program team from the technical side with the startups, and I was working with them a lot back in the past years. And what I see is that startups are, for startups, doing something in the cloud or having the infrastructure in the cloud is the default. It's obvious that they don't even think about having the infrastructure on premises or somewhere else or at a hoster. It's obvious that they will start with one of the bigger hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, or some cases mostly not for Hungarian ISVs and startups, Alibaba Cloud or some of these Eastern solutions. So yeah, what I see is that smaller companies and startups are way ahead of the larger enterprises, but it's obvious basically. So smaller companies will transform much quicker than huge behemoths. So yeah.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, I would say that in our region, it's definitely accelerating. I mean, if there's one clear way how to demonstrate how fast it's accelerating, is our regional expansion in Poland and Greece. I mean, it's not like every other day that we say, oops, there's a new Azure region in this particular country. That's a clear commitment of Microsoft as well. It is accelerating. I mean, it might be perhaps a little bit unfair to compare us to other more mature markets because for multiple various reasons, it's a bit of a different story. But then again, like I said, it's accelerating, and the technology that we're using, it's way beyond VMs and way beyond the usual rhetorical approach of, let me do containers. Now it's much more going into a Microsoft. We have access to this data. How can we leverage it? How can we tap into this data? As Satya has once said, data is the new oil. And that is what we are seeing in reality in CE. The risk, I would say, is not enough skilled people. That's the only risk in CE that can inhibit this acceleration. Other than that, it's going really well. It's going really well. Good for us, eh?
Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much. And that was our last topic to cover today. So, colleagues, thank you very much for joining us today. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did. And I hope we will have the chance to see each other next time. Goodbye.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.